In 1943, this farm, you're talking of this farm right here, okay. In 1943, Richard's dad, Leonide, bought the farm. And when he bought the farm, they had horses on the farm and one tractor, and it had the iron wheels on the tractor. And I think the next year they put rubber tires on it. And the horses, the man they bought this farm from was Fred Brown. He took the horses when he left, so they didn't have any horses anymore. That's when Richard started. And Richard was like 12 years old when his parents moved from Richford. They had a farm in Richford, they sold it, and they bought this farm. And at that time, Richard's dad had about 40 cows, milk cows. And there's 340 acres on this farm. His father farmed all his life. And Richard farmed all his life. Yeah, they had farmed Richard, well, from the time he was 10, 12, he had worked, and then he graduated from St. Mary's in 1950, and then in 1963, Richard and I bought the farm. When Richard's dad had the farm, there was about 40 milk cows. And we bought the farm, and then we added more, and then we had about 50 milk cows. And in 1998, our son Andrew bought the farm, and he has now about 80 cows and is still farming. I was a farmer's daughter. My dad farmed all his life, so we always lived on the farm, and we were back in the times when you had to tumble hay, and you had the hay loaders, tumble hay first and then the hay loaders. And so my dad always worked on farms, but he worked on half. And that's what they used to do. They'd work half, get paid half the milk check, and the owner got the other half of the milk check. And so I always was on a farm. But I never did much as far as here. When we were first married, I went down to the barn and probably washed the milk pails and things like that. But otherwise, I never worked on the farm. I might drive the tractor or something like that, but otherwise, never milked a cow. My mother always said, don't start milking the cows because you're going to end up milking them, and I never did milk them. But I had two brothers, so the two brothers usually did that, and I was the only girl, so I usually stayed in the house with my mother. The price of milk would go up and the price of milk would go down, but the grain prices would stay the same, and if you bought any machinery, it was very high. And so a lot of times when the milk check came in, it probably just barely paid the bills, and sometimes it didn't pay them. Of course, milk was up over $20 a hundred, and now it's down to $16 a hundred. So that's a big drop for the farmers, so they really can't plan from year to year what they're going to do because it depends on the price of milk. And when it was 20, 21, or 22, it was excellent, but now it's just gone down to 16. So these people see these farmers and think they're rich, but it looks big when the milk check comes in, but once you start spreading it out to all the departments that are needed, it's very different because now they have the tractors, and now they have some people like the farm here now, he has somebody that comes in and does his manure spreading, plants his corn, he cuts his hay, and then they come and they pick it up, and then it all goes into the, what do I want to call it? Not silo, the bins over there, the bunkers. Goes into the bunker silos. And they do have to have a little bit of hay because when they feed grain, they got an electric feeder that goes right down the middle of the barn, and they have to put a bale of hay in that every time they use it. But there isn't a lot of, most of it goes into the bunker, and he only bales, I don't know if he bales probably 400 bales, and that's it. The rest of it is in that bunker silo. And he feeds that off with a tractor and comes in and dumps it in the front of the cows. I think it is because you've got less farms and we have more people, and if they want the milk, the cheese, ice cream, they've got to have the milk to begin with. The family farm is great though to live on. I think it's great for the children because they always have a job to do. And it may not be a very big job, but they have responsibility and realize that it's a farm family, and we're a family and we work together. I think it may be easier as far as the manual work, but as far as the income, I think it takes a lot more income today to keep the farm up. And because the buying is, I mean, everything, they have sawdust comes in a big truck, and I remember back we probably paid, $400 or $500 for it, and now it's probably $1,500. And they have to have that to bed the cows in the barn, to keep the floors dry. And that's just one example of how much things are. And I know grain is very expensive, and they have to have grain. If they don't have grain, they don't produce. And Andy does have an excellent herd. I don't know what he's producing now, but I know his cows are great big Holsteins. He has Holstein cows, and they're all Holsteins. And they produce well for his size. But like like if he'd like a milking parlor, he does not have a milking parlor. He only has a pipeline, and there just isn't the income to build a milking parlor, which would be more convenient. But because now he's got the milk lines that the milk goes directly into the bulk tank. But it'd be easier if he had a milking parlor where he could stand and milk those cows. There's always something that's an expense. And then of course they have their equipment, their tractors and things like that, that are, if they break down or something, it's nothing to have to pay over $1,000 for repairs. Mm-hmm. So farming is kind of an up and down in the prices, and so the farmer, most of them have a subline, and right now he's selling sap. We never had a sugar place on this place, but right now over to the other farm, he's got the trees, and then he found a few over here, and so that's his outlet right now. He sells sap to kind of pay for the extra, or make any extra money. And his wife works. Yeah, she works. But some of them are going the organic farming, and most of them have some other outlet that they do besides. Some of them is cheese, and I don't know, there's so many different outlets but today most farmers just don't farm like the old. In the beginning, the farmers, and my father-in-law, he just farmed. That was his thing. But now farming have some other outlet. And I think that's the only way you can make it on a family farm now, because the farms aren't big enough. See, the big farms, they're taking over and they produce, but of course they have a lot of people working for them. I'm sure they have a lot of expenses too. Yes, I see that. The children are going to college, and then they've decided that they can't make it. They just can't make it on the farm. So what happens, usually the family farm is sold to some other farm, and it becomes into one of these bigger farms. And I don't know what the farmer, I think some of these farmers I know that sold end up going working for the fella on the bigger farms. And then another thing is when they sell their cows now, they lease out their land. And that's a good way of making money, is leasing out. There's been a couple that have started, but it might be like a sheep farm or not a dairy farm. I haven't seen very many that would be a dairy farm, because it's so expensive to buy the animals to start with. And really today, unless you go into a family farm, there's no way that anybody can afford to buy a farm because of all the land. The prices are so high. I advise exactly what we did. We went into partnership with our son for 5 years. He had the farm books. He paid the bills. So in that 5-year time, it gave him the opportunity to actually see what income was coming in and what income was going out. And we were still in control of the farm. And each year we gave him like a percentage of the partnership. So if it was 5 years, it was probably 20%. Okay, we would deed him over 20% that year. And then the next year, we would deed him over 20 more percent. And then when it came, he had gotten 100%, then we would sell the farm to him with an option that it wasn't going to be so expensive, but he'd already inherited 5 years of the farm. I think the most satisfying aspect is the families together. They do things together, they work together, they eat together, and I think that's the biggest. And I find they have to have, the children have responsibilities because of their jobs they have to do. And they don't say no, they know it's part of working with the family, so the family always works together.